And happy Wednesday. Welcome to a very special edition of Keeping It Real with the Ayn Rand Center UK. You will note that I am not here with my normal host, Robert Nazer, who's unavailable today. And so I hope you'll be patient and forgiving with me, friends, lovers, and students of Objectivism out there. But we have a very special edition today. On more than one occasion during our discussions of Dr. Peikoff's book, Keeping It Real, Dr. Peikoff has endorsed internet dating. And unfortunately, Mr. Nazer and I have old married men for both of us more than 20 years. We've kind of been out of it and we're not really aware of it. And a few weeks ago, I terribly got wrong which way you even swipe on these dating sites. And so today we've got a very special guest who is a little more informed and up to date on the matter of internet dating and can give us some perspective on it. Jeffrey Young is a native of San Diego and is currently in psychotherapy practice with both couples and individuals in private telehealth settings, as well as being a team lead at an acute psychiatric care facility. So he has a tremendous background for this that might help us, as well as some personal experience. Forgive me for reading, but I want to get this all right because it is a rather impressive resume. Returning to graduate school in his late 40s, Jeffrey earned his master's degree in marital and family therapy from the University of San Diego in 2014. And after training and working in various settings, including 2 Veterans Administration clinics in San Diego and Tijuana, Mexico, he has been a licensed marital and family therapist in California. Jeffrey had previously matriculated, earning a master's degree in classical and comparative literature from the University of California at San Diego, and a philosophy degree with honors from the University of California at Irvine. He taught English at a prestigious
1986.
Wow.
Yeah.
He taught English at a prestigious private prep school for 10 years. He has studied and taught abroad, including English to Spanish speakers in Mexico.
Yeah,
as he describes it, he enjoys, quote, full contact living. And when traveling, quote, going native. He is a polyglot, familiar with several languages, Russian, Spanish, ancient Greek, you name it. Jeffrey Young is probably familiar with it.
well, not you name it, but yes.
He has been married. He's been involved in a variety of relationships and has a nearly 17-year-old son. He's been involved working with and for the Men's Center of Los Angeles, something maybe we can get into. I would describe Jeffrey Young, whom I have known for over 35 years, as a Renaissance man. He is a very gifted poet and songwriter as well. So welcome, Jeffrey, and thank you for joining us today.
James, it's a complete honor and a pleasure and a delight, I will say, to be here this morning because, among other things, I am not at the hospital. And I love my work. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely do. But what a pleasure to be here to talk about what a lovely, life-affirming, delightful topic that we can have fun with. I mean, dating, the great adventure, it's a process of discovery, right? It's meant to be approached like life with gusto.
It should be fun.
What's that?
It should be fun.
It should be fun, exactly. Let's have some fun. Speaking of Men's Center Los Angeles, one of the things that we do when we're doing this sort of men's spiritual work is we set an intention. I'm very big on being present and setting an intention. And I'm thinking as we're going into this conversation, Jim, as we're exploring these topics with our audience, we set the intention. And one of the intentions is it is fun, right? We are going in with openness and curiosity. Yes.
And
it's
seeking one of the highest values in life. Well, that
indeed.
It leads me to my first question. On
Sure.
the one hand, it certainly appears that the internet has opened up vast new opportunities for meeting new people. Truly, I mean, where before the internet, we would, meet handfuls of people perhaps in the course of months or years. We now have thousands available. But On the other hand, it seems to have opened up a host of new dangers too, ranging from catfishing to new chances for predators to get to people. Um, what are the dangers specific to online dating in your view, as opposed to just being online in general or old-fashioned dating?
Yeah, right. So that opens up an interesting nest of questions. So as we were discussing this, so we had this idea that it's opening up a Pandora's box, and we mixed up the metaphor a little bit. It's opening up a Pandora's box of green lights and red flags. I was thinking, really, when you're out there dealing with people, it's like, remember the thing about Pandora is that she was a woman who was endowed with all of the gifts of the gods in one being, but she also had a box with all the world's woes, and woe betide the person who opened the box. And so it is in fact a mixture, and you need to have a system, really, if you will, to wade through this and to identify. But let me speak more specifically to risk. First of all, consider the fact that life, the process of life, the process of seeking and securing and pursuing values itself involves risk. It must of necessity. Because as you're going into this realm, you are investing of yourself, your time, your energy, your money, your resources. You are investing. So this you must orient yourself towards the values you are seeking, and make sure that you are able to recognize them as they come up.
Does the internet itself provide some help in screening
Yeah,
some
exactly.
of the red flags or total deal breakers, in fact?
It does. Let me just. I think it's important to address the risk piece. Okay, so I thought, first of all, remember that the internet itself as a forum did not invent fraud. Fraudulent human, probably
People
fraud.
weren't always telling the truth in potential dates.
Yes, the internet did not invent systematic representation in a predatory fashion to obtain. Yes, it did
Right.
not. So being aware of that, risk is, of course, certainly important. But in that entire sphere, this is what I think I would want to say. I think the appropriate attitude, because when you are investing of yourself and you make contact with a person, either in the internet realm or then beyond that, you interact with them in person, the proper attitude is caveat emptor. You are engaging in an exchange of values, and therefore your first responsibility is to mind the store, to be aware of what you're engaged in, right? Have your eyes wide open. And by the way, my motto, and I learned this from a woman that I dated who was a very perspicacious individual, and introduced me to some things about how to vet people. Frankly, vet and be prepared to be vetted. We're dealing in truth. We're dealing in truth here. We're dealing in honest representation. I mean,
Right.
you can
Well,
look me up.
the avoidance of the dangers is one thing, but we as objective
Yeah,
are seeking the best in life. We're seeking the most in life.
e-
So let's talk about
exactly.
the positive here. And
Yeah,
folks, we at the
let's.
Ayn Rand Center UK very much appreciate if you find this kind of content of any kind of value. I would urge you to become a subscriber, a member, hit like and share, specifically for any particular material you have out there. And I also want to encourage people who might be listening to chime in with super chats. This is an interesting topic that people have had to be dealing with in recent years. And if you guys out there have questions, please feel free to submit them, and super chats will get our priority. But you mentioned something earlier, Jeff. You said you've described, in fact, your own approach to dating as a, quote, system. Let me get this right: a system for identifying shared values embodied in another person. What do you mean by that?
I think that got a little bit mangled in the way it was written down. So let me parse that out a little bit. Yes. Okay. So it is a system. There is a method to achieve results in life. Of course, you have to have a method that keeps you focused on, and then you have to identify a process that will lead to the results that you're seeking. And so certainly there is a system, but what is being identified here are of two sorts. Number one, you are identifying values represented in the other person. You are coming to recognize, to identify, and then to appreciate the values represented by the other person and the domain of the values that you share. In other words, my values and her or his values overlap significantly. So we're identifying, so there's a system for identifying the values represented or embodied, as I like to say, in another person. And then also the values, identifying the values you share. They're both important.
Really two distinct things then.
They are, well, they're distinct and overlapping things. Remember, everything about the person is going to overlap because they are a complete, remember, the true is the whole here, the WHOL variety, right? The
Right.
whole person, we're talking about the whole person. Coming to know a whole person requires that you be open to taking in a lot of data. So really what I want to comment rather more specifically is how does one go about sifting through and identifying? And what I have to say is the leading edge of this is you are putting yourself out there. Remember, this is what you're bringing to the table. The major thrust of this is know thyself. You need to know what you are bringing. As you're looking out and assessing, this is the standard, right? My life here, how I walk in the world, how I live. This is me, and this is what I'm looking for. That way, right, when you're putting yourself out there, when you are the leading edge of your values, as you're identifying them in the other person, there can emerge like a congruence between your values, and you will see. But there's a process.
So
Now,
it's not just a checklist of requirements. It's actually you putting yourself out forward.
that is correct because my values occur in me as an integration.
Got it. Are there specific techniques you use or?
Yes. Yeah. There are. So let me let me orient you to the process because, like you said, you're not exactly the expert.
No.
And so so having not been on the dating sites as I have over almost as long a time as you've been married to your lovely wife Holly, let me say that when you are reading a dating profile itself is an art, and I'm really a master of that, and I can kind of show you. But remember, I am not here as a dating coach or anything like that. I'm expressing my experience and also as informed by the fact that I'm a relationship therapist. Do you have a question coming in that I'm wondering because I was seeing that?
Yeah, we do. Daniel, is there a super chat?
Yeah, we have a first super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. And then a super chat from Rob for $20. He's asking, as an objectivist with a very refined and specific set of values, how and when do you announce, in quotation marks, your value system, i.e. to filter in or out the potential person as a fit or non-fit? And then we quickly also have a super chat from Walter. Thank you so much.
Sure, but that's a good question though.
Those are wonderful.
As an objectivist, when do we
Yeah.
put that? You talk about putting yourself up front. When
Well, I
is
did.
that appropriate?
Well, that's very interesting because how is it that you express your values? If you're saying, for example, I am now going to announce that my top values are independence, integrity, productiveness, pride, those are abstract. Where are the concretes? What is that? How do you live that value? How do you live that value? This is why I'm saying it is important, right? You're dealing with another mind, so it is important that you see eye to eye on things like that. So if you are going to announce that you hold certain principles and that these are deal breakers for you, I say that goes in the housekeeping phase then, if it's that important to you. But I will also sort of encourage you to consider the way you are living your values, because it is your lived values that are the expression of your character. And ultimately, it is your character that he or she will be responding to.
Fascinating. What's the next super chat, Daniel?
Just donations.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Bonnie, Rob, all the donations out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, what you just said, Jeffrey, leads to the next question. There are some features that we're looking for, I suppose, that are not a question of moral character, that maybe involve physical characteristics or deeply ingrained personality traits. But on the other hand, what role does moral character play in this process, or the evaluation of moral character in this process, specifically something like honesty?
Well, what role does character...
More generally, in fact, our viewers may not know this, but as a psychotherapist, you place a great deal of emphasis on moral character in a psychological context. And I guess that's what I'm trying to poke at.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yes. Okay. But I think we maybe stinted on the lead up to this, because remember, as I was just saying, this is an empirical process, right? Coming to know someone, there is a process involved. So remember, in the process of identifying character, certainly coming to be able to identify another character is an important, we're getting there. I suggest that it's important to track what we were talking about earlier, because remember, we were talking about what is the experience as you're winnowing through and putting yourself out there. So before we get to the question of how do you identify character, I think it's important to recognize that how do you evaluate the other person? Evaluate, not judge. Remember, I don't judge. Judgment requires understanding. I don't understand, much less comprehend, this other individual that I'm interacting with. No, but I am evaluating. What am I doing? In other words, I am literally running this experience along my values. Now, how can I do that successfully if I do not know myself profoundly? If I am not acquainted with my own internal furniture, the basic aspects of my experience. And by the way, getting back to the dating realm specifically, there are various like psychometric tests and things, and I urge caution when using things like that. But remember, as a process of self-discovery, don't you like to take those tests? I know, like I do.
Well, but we're hardly in a position to hand out the Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we could send out it to before any potential date? First I want you to do a day's worth of written tests so I can get some kind of a diagnosis on your psychology. But unfortunately, we can't do that.
Well, I think that's the DA in you talking, right? I think you took the notion of vet and be prepared to be vetted a little too seriously. That's not quite what I meant, but I would suggest, for example, that you could become acquainted with, for example, your attachment style or your attachment strategy. Now, I don't want to get into a technical conversation about psychology, but this is in the common vernacular. By the way, I would like to kind of issue a caution about using psychobabble and jargon and things like that. I do not, as a professional, I am counseling against doing that sort of thing. But I think when using a psychological term like attachment is relevant to our context here, and it absolutely is. Your attachment strategy or style is your way, your basic way of feeling, experiencing, being connected to another human. It's at the core of that experience. And if you, in some way, if you are impaired from feeling securely connected with your partner, then that is going to get in the way of your experience. And so part of self-knowledge is that. Also, remember that a selfish approach requires that you are taking appropriate self-care to be the best that you can be. I think, right. Again, thinking about what you're bringing to the table, because ultimately you want to bring as much of yourself to the table, because then when you are seen, when you make yourself vulnerable, when you expose yourself, your true self to the person, and then you are seen, you can have a secure connection with that person.
I have to here kind of maybe mention my own experience when I was in my 20s and dating women. When I started out, I was always putting what I would say, but to put it nicely, my best foot forward. In other words, putting what I thought would be the impressive virtues of myself, my cool resume. You have a cool resume up front.
Yes.
That didn't seem to work out so well. By the time I got disillusioned with that, and I met the woman that I've now been married to for 26 years, I took a whole new strategy. I said, I'm going to put myself up front, oddnesses, weirdnesses, warts and all, things that might not be most appealing to a woman, but I would be honest about them. And it worked. She appreciated the openness, the vulnerability, and we got much more visibility. And I was much better able to assess her character and her response to me as a person. Is that what you mean?
It is very much. It is, yeah. For a couple of reasons, we have. I was going to talk about this when we get to character, but we have an actual and an aspirational dimension to our value system and who we are. And
right.
we want to be where we are actual. I know we want to have people see us also for our aspirational. And I think it's healthy to have the aspirational, but I think it's very healthy too to be grounded in a sense of who we actually are, how we are actually responding to that person, rather than what we think we should want, which can really get us into trouble. So what you're saying,
and in evaluating
what you're saying is when you put yourself out there, warts and all, quote unquote,
right.
Yes, that's important. That's important. Because remember now, wow, this person really sees me. They're not just getting the curated view, right? They're not just getting the VIP tour here. They're getting really
a chance to see any potential red flags or deal breakers with me. And on the other hand, when I'm evaluating the other person,
yes.
It's vital how they react to that. Do they respond to that openness and vulnerability? And it's a way for me to sort of vet them as well.
It absolutely is. The common ingredient, I guess, is what I would say in my business, really in therapy about process. What you often have to recognize, because sometimes you're just beaten into it, because you try all these various approaches, and really the best way to go is to go slow. Because there is really, time is the one thing, remember, a respect for time for me, deal breaker, number one, your respect for me is you respect my time. I will respect your time. That is a number one.
Right. And in evaluating character, doesn't it take time? I mean, you can't really evaluate character. I mean, moral character isn't just one moment and one out of context event. You have to see a person's characteristic approach, their pattern of behavior over a period, at least of some time, before you can even get a clue about that, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. It is an inductive process, James,
Right, to draw generalizations about the person who's going to be.
Otherwise, remember, and so this is another thing too. What can distort it is your aspirations too. Because I am guilty of way over reading. If I think I see a virtue or something, man, and I'm all over it, right? Because just the sign of something like that, it makes me want to come in, and I will fill in the blanks with my own sense of life, with my own character, with my gotta be careful.
Saying about lived values versus stated or aspirational values, because a person will often present themselves through their aspirational values, their actually lived values.
Yes, I know. Well, we were relating our experience, and I remember early on when I would put out these aspirational things, I'm like, wait a minute, no, that's not me. It's like when I first read The Fountainhead, and I'm thinking, oh my God, these larger than life figures and stuff, and it's going to take some time for you to find you in that, and to grow into your unique expression of that grand human potential. It takes time. Now, character and moral evaluation, we were going to talk about that.
Yeah.
So let's consider our audience here, and I'll just let me ask the question. So, how do you recognize character? So,
it takes time. It takes observation.
No. I'm asking the audience to sort of introspect.
Okay.
And right. So just ask yourself, well, how do I recognize character? Now, you get a gold star if you answered something like, well, I look in the mirror, or well, I introspect. You see, your character, being in touch with your character, these are my lived values. These are the choices which over time have resulted in this. This is the expression of who I am.
So knowing yourself is the key to knowing what you want in another person.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? And we have to sort of sort through in ourselves and the other person the difference between their actual operative values and their sort of lip service values.
Yes, those are true too. But I want to slow it down and unpack it a little bit more slowly.
Okay.
Because you cannot discover the truth merely by introspection. This is not what I'm setting up here. Because it is important to have objective reference and references, which I'll get to my next point, and I think you're going to like this next point, because remember yourself. I want to emphasize that. In fact, little personal promo. So on my business card, this is my former business card, when I used to have an in-person office, cherished the days. Business card, the top line of my business card below Jeffrey Young, LMFT, licensed marital and family therapist, says, your most important relationship is with yourself.
So task number one is right. So task number one is knowing what I want and what I need and what's important for me in life.
Correct. Correct.
Amazing. Yeah.
But remember, yeah, right, exactly. In other words, to be properly selfish, which we also have to talk about. But
Well,
I
what
think,
is that leads me
but
right to the next question.
no,
What
no,
do you
no, no. Slow
Oh,
down, slow
oh
down.
yes.
I don't want to jump ahead. Actually,
Okay.
remember what I was talking about slowing the roll. So I'm going to exemplify that just for a moment. So if I could just model, I want us to slow down because I don't want to jump over a very, very important point. How does one, like I said, it's not just through introspection. What is the most important? How does one develop and grow into a sense of relatedness to others? Well, here's my plug for friendship. That's right. At the base of relationships are your chosen relationships. Your chosen relationships are the expression of your developing character. And those chosen relationships reflect back on you and help you to see your own character in development, including, thanks to my very dear friends for pointing out to me my blind spots, which are legion, by the way. I'm working on improving those, but my gosh,
Well,
like the
as my
rest of us.
dearest, I have to tell the audience, my dearest male friend in the world, you're telling people that I have been critical of you. I have been. I hope it's been constructive. But what you're saying is that it is through friendships that we can sort of practice putting ourselves out there, practice getting visibility, and discover ourselves in the process. But it also provides a sort of a secure base from which to explore new relationships.
Mhm. It absolutely does. It
Oh, that's
absolutely does.
fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so then getting to the role of self-esteem, what is the role of self-esteem in this process, and is selfishness the correct orientation?
Hmm. Well, that's practically a rhetorical question, I think,
Well,
to
yes,
this audience.
it
You
is.
know, um, um, so self-esteem. Am I worthy of attaining my highest values? Does my life matter to me? Is it important? Well, of course. It's what grounds it. But I think, and is selfishness the correct orientation? Well, it's the only orientation. The other is a negation of an orientation. Non-self, you can't have a relationship with a non-self. Any relationship you're going to have it is a self and another self.
So part of that know thyself precondition is knowing yourself, knowing what you are able and worthy of, and finding that in another person. You know, the big red flag for me when I was dating was exactly that, a lack of self-esteem in the other person. They had no sense of self. You know, we go back to
Yeah.
the Ayn Rand's famous quote from The Fountainhead: in order to say I love you, one must first be able to say the I. And it both applied to me, but also to the person I was dating. Or do they have some sense of confidence, some sense of identity, an independent identity? Because otherwise, that would be the big, I don't know, I don't want to use psychobabble, but the big neurotic red flag that this person, they're seeking to make up from some loss. They're seeking me to bandage some wound, as opposed to someone to grow with and develop with and share values with.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it absolutely does. Um, I think so. Let me speak from my couples work. Um, People come into couples work thinking that they have a problem with communication, and it very quickly becomes evident that their problem is not with communication. or as I like to say, it's not that you're not able to say it, it's that they don't like what they're hearing. But in this case, what I typically find is communication. It's that even identifying and expressing one's own needs or preferences is not on the menu for a lot of people, because we are raised in a culture of altruism. Attending to your own needs, that has no moral significance at all. That is not important. You need to attend to the needs of the other. And so we're taught, well, to be in relationship with someone is to focus on their needs. And hopefully they're going to focus on your needs. What? Well, first of all, even if that were the case, which seems horribly unbalanced and second-handed to me, like, don't you just want to forthrightly pursue your values? After all, don't you want the other person to know, like, yeah, you're super important to me. Like, I want to be with you. I like being with you. I want to explore this with you. I want to touch you. I want to,
right.
Yes. I mean, yeah, that's an expression exactly of that. I want you. I need you. That is a selfish expression, and these couples have no selfishness at all. They have no sense of, yeah, this is what I want. And being able to simply say that, you know, honey, God, I love you, but I wish, like, how is the person supposed to know? But why do they hold back? Why is there the expectation of that? Because they have had any proper selfishness trained out of them.
Right. You know, taking
family experience.
Taking this back to an earlier thing you said about respecting the other person's time and energy, and their respect for your time and energy, and the early stages in an internet text exchange or something, when we're first getting to know someone, even online, we should be attentive to our own selfish emotions or selfish needs by means of our emotions. So you had a great example for this when we were discussing this earlier. You said it's that experience of forgetting the time, losing time with someone, not realizing how long the conversation's gone. And oh wow, has it already been an hour that we've been talking? Is a good way to note in yourself that both of you are actually finding a selfish value in here, because you're willing to invest this time, and the time got away from you, as a sort of a green light, in the sense that there's mutual selfishness going on.
That's a lovely way to look at it. I mean, it's such a delight. I mean, going back to the process, what's such a thrill is when you, first of all, when you start by reading someone's profile, and you really pay attention. Well, there's another person on the other end of that, and you know, the way they express themselves in their profile. And by the way, you know, I've written quite a few profiles, and I want to, you know, it should be like, I'm expecting there's a sign of there's a mind behind this, right? So in the process of discovering the signature of their soul, first you're making contact with another mind. And the first way you do that, for me, the most thrilling way, is when you start texting with someone. I love text as a medium. I mean, I'm you know, a linguist and all of that, and I love it. A veteran English teacher. I delight in the use of language for creative self-expression. Again, I can tell there's another self over there. There's another mind. There's another, he or she. I love that. That begins the process of discovery. You can tell so much by the way somebody expresses themselves. And by the way, do they have a respect for the mind itself? Is this a rational being? You can tell. You can tell a lot. Also, are they in touch with their emotions? Are you getting the sense of a genuine person? Are they playful? Are they able to joke around? These are important signs. These are great. And you establish this by text. But listen, getting back to this, having a method. I have a method for a reason. Text is lovely, but believe me, if there's a connection, I will establish whether there's a connection fairly quickly that's worth exploring further, but then you have to broaden it. And I love a phone conversation. First of all, on a personal level, I well know that somebody's tone of voice and their prosody and all that is just magic to me. It has an effect on me. Like, I fall in love with singer-songwriters. I'm that kind of guy. So a person's voice is very important to me. I know that about myself, so naturally I want to have a phone conversation. But just in general, again, it's very different from text. Now you're broadening into how they present as a person through their voice. Now, here is where the important, where it needs for me to go. If I'm now going to invest any more sort of emotional and exploratory energy, really, I think it's important to share space together as soon as possible, because the some concrete individual out there, that complete universe, is really only manifest in person.
I love that word you used earlier, the signature of someone's soul. So how does that relate? Objectivists use the concept of sense of life, and
Yes.
Ayn Rand believed that the two most important areas where sense of life show up is obviously in our response to art, but also in romantic love.
Yeah.
Is it, when you talk signature of someone's soul, are you talking something more than just sense of life, something more embracing about their consciousness, or what do you mean by that? What are we looking for when we have our text impressions, and when we meet someone for the first time and we get that sense of who they are?
Wow, that's a great question, because immediately, like, I'm concretizing it in my own mind, and I'm thinking about what it is that I'm looking for. If you're wondering about that expression, signature of the soul, I think it's important to recognize then, and to connect with the notion of character. When we're talking about a soul or a spirit in a properly secular sense, we are referring to the totality of that one individual human organism, the completeness of that. Not some disembodied thing that transcends, or no, the complete integrated organism, an aspect of which is this unique, precious consciousness, which only occurs once.
Wow.
The whole thing. Now, but how do you recognize that unique expression of a human consciousness? So the outline of it really is in terms of recognizing character. Character is the realm of self-expression that treats of value pursuit, the things that are within within the range of our choice. Committed action to those values over time develops into character, and character matures and develops. I can speak personally, again, and continuing to work in myself. As I have aged and developed, I have noticed sea changes in myself. And I've also noticed that my ability to affect a personal transformation in ways becomes easier. Interesting.
Right.
But I would say that the sort of the signature of my soul, if you were to identify it, what things would you single out? You're a perceptive person, right? So I would turn the question around to you, James. When you're looking for a signature. Oh, and by the way, I want to remind us. See, there are some key differences between art and people. And I think we should probably address that. You don't say, right? In coming to recognize somebody's character, the expression is not unlike, like, I can think, what would Howard Rourke do? I know, what would Jane Eyre say? I have a pretty good idea. I know those characters. How? Well, because the author created it in such a way that he or she provided the concretes that allow me to integrate that into a sense of that person's character. But so that was an artistic creation.
Over time and in different settings.
Yes.
Just as we evaluate Howard Rourke or Jane Eyre as independent because of we see their behavior over time,
right.
That is also a crucial thing, and there's no substitute for that in effect.
No, there absolutely is not. Uh,
Well, this actually kind of links to the,
to really to come to know somebody is to share space with them where it's you and them and reality. But remember, I gather a lot of very valuable intel about somebody by the way they interact with other people. I simply observe that. I mean,
right,
so what did they say? Like, I mean, I forget who it was who said, look, I watch how, when I'm on a date, I watch how they treat the wait staff. There's
right,
something in that. You know what I'm
right.
saying? There
There,
really is something. You betray your character in all kinds of interesting ways. It leaks out, really, if you're really attentive to it and
okay,
you
I'm
know
going to
what's
tell one
going
more story.
on.
One of my
Please
very
do.
one of my very first trips that I took with Holly when we were dating was we drove up to San Francisco together, and on the way we had a car the car broke down. We had to put it into the garage for the afternoon, and rather than all get freaked out, I said, "Hey, let's still have fun, be relaxed." We went and continued to have a great day, finding the local thing to do while the car was being fixed. And when it was all said and done, later on, when we were evaluating getting to know each other, Holly said, "That was a very important experience for me because I saw you sort of in a crisis and saw how you reacted to that. You didn't freak out. You were still eager to make the most of the moment and have a relaxed, good time with me." Is that the kind of thing that we're looking for over time to evaluate someone's character and their style of soul and whether or not it's compatible with you and you can get along with them?
Well, I think you just answered your own question, Jim. That was a really grand example of precisely that thing. However, I would say that I don't believe in the ethics of emergencies. And by the way, I do think your character. I do. No, I'm sorry. That was kind of a
No,
point.
actually, a good comparison.
It's a good thing, right? Because remember, your character is not just. Let me give you a counterexample. If I'm out on a date with somebody and they leap into the water and save a drowning baby, I mean, it's like I'm really gonna go like, wow, this person
It
is a
doesn't come up
hero.
so often, but
I don't know. Like, I'm not gonna no. Again, there is no replacement for seeing how somebody walks in the world. This is the way I like to describe it. How do they show up? How do they live their values? That's what I'm evaluating them. That's what I'm actually responding to. When somebody walks in the world with integrity, I'm moved by that. But again, what are the concretes? What are my observations? What are my experiences that allow me to recognize and respond to that in that person?
right. Well,
Right? So again, yeah.
this kind of leads perfectly to my last question here. Um, you know, some objectivists, students of objectivism, might reflexively reject out of hand a concept like chemistry, because it is often inexactly used or used as a vague, undefined way. But in your view, what
Sure.
is the meaning of chemistry and what is the role that it plays in getting to know someone, especially early on?
Wow, that is a great question, and I think that it is appropriate to not reflex. I don't believe in reflexively rejecting things as a rule. In fact, I think contempt prior to investigation is probably an epistemological bad idea. Um,
Yeah.
I think that was James, right? Yeah, contempt prior to experience. Now the chemistry. Okay, so let me break it down a little bit. So first of all, remember, I am proudly I am a proud speciesist. I think humans are absolutely glorious creatures, and we have the gifts of millions of years of evolution at our disposal. Much of what happens, not just in sexual pair bonding and sexual attraction and all that, but simply in our valenced response to another person is below the level of conscious awareness. Only rarely intrudes into any awareness at all, except as a basic valence, yes, no, good, bad,
Well,
that.
Ayn tells the story that it was before she ever had any conversation. The way her future husband of 50 years, Frank O'Connor, moved around and acted,
Oh,
the style of his soul was what attracted her. And,
yeah.
and it was obviously at a pre-verbal level because she hadn't yet met him. And so she famously trips him on the bus in order to get to know him. But there was something about, like you say, the signature of his soul that was very attractive to her.
Yes. Okay. Again, though, so when we're talking about signature of soul, I don't think that we're talking chemistry, though. Remember what I was just saying. Now, it's important to note how. Wait, hold on, please. It's important to note here that there are aspects of recognizing signature of soul that are from the conscious, aware, conceptual level down, just as there are aspects of recognizing it that arise, as it were, from the ground up, from the body up. Right? We are integrated beings, and therefore the recognition of and response to the signature of the soul contains both a cognitive element, but all of that. Now, when I'm referring to chemistry, remember, I am referring to, in a sense, the organismic sum, the bottom up. It's below the level of awareness, but it merges into awareness as emotion does, as a sum. And in this case, as a yes or a no. And you do not experience that chemistry fully until you are actually sharing space with another human being. To get to the example of Frank O'Connor, right? The way he moved in space, well, how would I have ever experienced that without being present with Frank? And the entire response of her being to the being of Frank, her future husband, was that. It was a combination.
What you're saying is that it's not just philosophy and our, the stuff that we're cognitively aware of up here, and it's not just the physical over here. Although when we're seeking a physical, intimate relationship, that physical compatibility is actually a part of it. You know, in this, I don't mean to bring myself up again, but
yes, you do.
Strange thing, because
Please do.
when I was first dating Holly, there was something just about her presence and the energy she brought to her smell. You know, and it's still her smell still just immediately affects me, and it's a total mystery to me how that stuff happens. But you're saying it's a blend of both the physical, especially when we're looking for a physical, intimate relationship. It's a blend of the physical and the cognitive, and so it's the overall mental and physical together.
It is, and here's also where it comes together. Remember, so what is so the essence of volition is paying attention, right? And so when you direct your conscious awareness, when you attend to something, then when you attend to it, then the experience is amplified by attending to it. And so becoming aware, see, remember, it comes up into your awareness. Scent is a perfect example. My goodness, a mother can recognize her baby by scent alone. Scent, we lost most of the importance of scent compared to like dogs, for example, who experience the world through scent. But nevertheless, it's very, very real, right? And so when you attend to that, and then it becomes that value that you're now experiencing as embodied in the other person just combines with the rest of how you experience that person into the very relationship itself. It's an aspect of the connection. It's an aspect of the intimacy.
Wow. So I just want to end with this, your wonderful definition of chemistry. It's the honesty of the body, and it can't be faked.
Yeah, yeah. It's not exactly a definition in the proper sense, but what it does highlight,
A
what it
description.
does highlight, remember, is that there is only one reality, and reality cannot be faked, and so you cannot attain a value by an attempt to fake reality. And when you meet, be honest with yourself. If there isn't that chemistry, it's not as though it can't be overcome, and it's not that other values couldn't be more important, but you might end up being friends, for example. But I think if your aim is to have that romantic, focused on the highest shared values in the person of another and what you aspire together to accomplish, because all of the synergies that open up in a romantic relationship, that's the beauty of it, right? The two universes coming together, and my God, the potential, the possibilities are just enormous. That's the beauty. That's the integrative beauty. And so all of it is relevant. Your mind, your body, your spirit, integrated. There's no mind-body dichotomy.
So if we approach it rationally, if we are aware of ourselves and our own needs and values here, internet dating should be and can be a great delight, to bring it to a conclusion here.
Indeed, it's the only game in town. It's an adventure. It is.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Jeffrey Young, for being our very special guest on this and giving us a little more up-to-date idea of internet dating than either Mr. Nasser, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, and I could bring to the situation. Today we have...
Remember, swipe right means yes, I choose you. Swipe left means no.
Thank you for the correction. I just want to remind our audience
that... a lot of missed opportunities.
Exactly. I just want to remind our audience that later today at the Daily Objective, about an hour from now, there'll be an interview with artist John Wass. I had the privilege of meeting him several years ago at the Ocon in Cleveland and watching him do his art. He is a brilliant artist and an amazing human being. So please try and tune into the Daily Objective today. I know I will, for the interview with John Wass. Tomorrow, of course, we'll have Thursday Collective, and you don't want to miss that. And everyone out there, please do consider becoming a supporter, a subscriber, join. There are certain things that you can only get if you're a paid monthly subscriber.
There is so much value.
We're starting a whole new Peikoff course this Sunday, so please consider joining us, but it's only for paid subscribers. Daniel, I noticed that we may have another super chat.
We have a super chat from Wes for $10, so thank you so much, but he has no question.
Thank you, Wes. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, Wes.
Well, I want to thank all the super chatters, the questions we got, and very much want to thank you, Jeffrey. What a great episode, and I think very relevant to many of our viewers. So have a wonderful day, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.